I did something this weekend that most people have not. I watched Disney Pixar's Elemental, a movie that is making history right now in the same way that the Titanic made history. I'm sorry, that's a bit mean, but it is true that Disney Pixar, despite being a monarch, if not the top monarch in the animation space, is having a lot of problems. I mean, from Pixar's Onward to Turning Red to Lightyear to now Elemental, it seems that the company has fallen, and fallen really bad. And that makes me really sad because I used to love Pixar films. I used to want to go see every single one of them. And I know people out there who aren't big film fans who say that the only films that they watch are Disney Pixar films. And that's crazy. It seems that that's fallen, and I want to get into why. But first, let's talk about Elemental. And did it deserve to be the absolute worst opening for Disney Pixar ever? Which it is. It came in on just $29 million in the domestic opening, which, to give you some perspective, is as much as the first Toy Story made in 1991, not adjusted for inflation. That is crazy. But did it deserve that? Well, the answer is yes and no. I watched the film and it honestly wasn't bad. It just wasn't great either. There was absolutely nothing about it that stood out to me as a film. There were parts where I was a little bit entertained. I did like how they handled the fire and water animation. It looked a lot better in motion than it did in the trailers, and it was kind of a nice romance between the lead characters. But the problem with the movie is if you've seen any Disney movie or any Pixar film or any animated film, then you know exactly what's going to happen. You know exactly how it's going to play out. You know exactly how the characters are going to be, and there's just absolutely nothing about it that's executed in a different manner. Even the whole concept of having it be the elements and using that to make some sort of allegory about discrimination doesn't work. It's just weird. Why would you give the elements feelings? And once again, segregation narrative doesn't work because fire is actually dangerous. But of course, that kind of theme has already been explored and explored better in Zootopia. So there's just absolutely nothing about this movie that is different. And honestly, that's my reaction that I had during the trailers of the film. They just were so boring. Whenever they would come up, because I go to the theater a lot, whenever they would come up, I would just be like, oh, I'm checking my phone, want to leave, because they were just boring. There is nothing original about this film. And that's why I think it's funny that people are using it. It's like, haha, people don't actually want original films. Yes, they do, but there's nothing original about this film. You have to actually give people original films that are interesting in a way. It is just recycling the exact same Pixar tropes on a different skin. And it's not like people even go to see the films made from Pixar that are IP films. Look at how Lightyear did. Before Elemental, that was the worst Pixar opening ever. Now, the CEO of Pixar has excused all the box office bombs that they've been having as Disney's fault because they put so many of their films on streaming, and that created a new habit for parents thinking, well, I'm just gonna throw this on streaming when it comes on there for my kids. But I don't think that that's it, because there are a lot of other movies that went on streaming first that came back to the theaters that have been mostly revived. Marvel went on streaming, and for a while there it still had its momentum back up with Spider-Man No Way Home and Doctor Strange. It still had good box office that seemed to rejuvenate before people decided they didn't like those movies. And there's also the fact that things like Turning Red or Raya or all these other Disney movies were not big hits on Disney+. Only Encanto was, and I gotta say, it's because that was the only good movie. But let's get into all the little details now. Why has Pixar gone downhill so vastly? First of all, there's how the animation space has changed over the years. Pixar's big claim to fame is it was the home of CGI animated project, the father of all CGI animated projects in the mainstream. Toy Story was the very first mainstream animated movie using CGI, and that's what they've been all about for decades. But the problem is that people aren't fascinated by CGI anymore. It's kind of reached its peak. In fact, CGI oftentimes gets criticized as being overused and boring. Pixar seems to have realized that and have been trying to up their game by introducing different animation styles to their projects. And while these are fun to watch, they're just not different enough to really excite people. Across the Spider-Verse is an example of what people really want from animated films now. It's not a movie that's just a CGI animated movie. It employs so many different art styles to enhance storytelling. And that is the new stuff that people really want to see. That is how we can expand the horizons of animation. But Pixar isn't there yet. And I hate to say it, but Pixar, for a while being state-of-the-art animated filmmaking with all the newest technology, is now seeming a bit like a dinosaur. And while I don't like to talk about politics on my channel, we need to talk about that part when it comes to what Disney has been doing. Because Disney used to be the safe, family-friendly, never controversial brand that parents felt they could just throw their kids in front of. That applies to both Pixar and Disney Animation. But they have been pushing the envelope lately. It was going on for a while, but the big blow blow-up was over the movie Turning Red, which went on Disney+, which almost got a PG-13 rating. And I think it went on Disney+ because Pixar was afraid of the controversy. But this is a movie that deals with a little girl going through puberty. She gets her first period, she gets really, really horny for boys, but the ending sort of theme of the movie and the message that they wanted to give seemed to be, you should do whatever you want and screw your parents, which obviously no parent wants their kids to hear. And while the former stuff that I mentioned in the film is not bad to explore, you have to consider that Pixar films are usually aimed at kids 5 and under, even though they can be appealing for much older ages, which is why parents took a big issue with it and that it kind of damaged the Disney brand of being safe and family friendly. And they've been pushing the envelope more in their later movies. And that is a big reason, I think, why people have been turned off to Pixar films and Disney animated films in general. But the last reason is the biggest reason in my opinion, and it was what I was getting at in the beginning with my review of Elemental. The creative spark and the good writing of Pixar films and the good imagination that those films had is gone. Monsters Incorporated and Toy Story had concepts where you were taking the what if X had feelings concept and actually making it work in an interesting story. Now it feels obligatory, like what if Elements had feelings? Does not work at all. It didn't work when I even first heard the concept, and who knows what they're going to anthropomorphize next. It's like all the superficial beats of Pixar films are there and the moments that you know are supposed to tug at your heartstrings, but they just don't have the soul and the thought behind them and the creativity. And is there a reason why that's happened? Well, actually, I researched it and there is. For years, Pixar was headed up by John Lasseter. He was the big creative head behind everything and was responsible for so much of Pixar's success. But in 2017, he got Me Too'd. People came forward with allegations accusing him of sexual harassment in the workplace and saying that his behavior encouraged it among other workers, making Pixar Studios a very toxic environment. This never went to court, but John Lasseter came forward and claimed while he was not guilty of all the accusations made against him, that he was responsible for a lot of the bad behavior, and therefore he left Pixar Studios. And it's very unfortunate that oftentimes when someone gets into a position of power that they abuse that power, but I hope that maybe that confrontation maybe changed him and that he's maybe hopefully getting back on track. Nevertheless, he left Pixar and went to Apple TV Plus and took with him a lot of the creatives that were working at Disney. For example, he took Nathan Greeno, who worked on Disney's Tangled, and they are over there at Apple TV Plus making allegedly films that are on par with Pixar's original successes. Or so I've heard. I haven't watched them, and neither have most people because they're on Apple TV Plus. But there is where all the creativity and the inspiration and the spark and the intelligence of Pixar went. And what's left of Pixar is basically these people who know on a superficial level how Pixar movies are supposed to sound and feel. They know the superficial ideas and tropes behind them, but they don't actually understand the writing behind them and the real creative vision that connected with audiences. That's why these Pixar films feel sort of manufactured. It's why we're not actually getting any good storytelling even in their IP films. The Incredibles 2 basically just retold the story of Incredibles 1, but worse. It's really unfortunate, and it's unfortunate to see Pixar entering its first dark age. And Disney Animation Studios has been through dark ages before and come out of it, but I'm not really sure how Pixar is going to come out of it with what the future looks like. Are they just going to get folded into Disney Animation Studios? Because right now they're not really looking too different. Can a studio that was founded on the wonders of CGI animation really pull through when CGI just doesn't fascinate people anymore? I don't really know, but it's a really unfortunate situation as I used to enjoy Pixar films so much. What do you guys think of Pixar? Do you think it can pull out of this? Let me know in the comments below. As always, if you like this video, you can subscribe. I got some other great videos on this channel you can check out, including my own short films, which my playlist for that is below. And if you like all my content, you can always support me on Patreon. As always, thank you, Patreon J. It costs only $5 to sign up. You get a lot of exclusive behind the scenes content with that. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.